Good evening and welcome to our COVID-19 update. I am Ladi Akere-Doluale. Here are the highlights at this hour. Lagos State government says increased testing will raise case numbers, but there is a need for alarm. Low compliance levels with COVID-19 guidelines continue to characterize markets in Lagos and Oyo states. And World Health Organization changes its position, now says countries should ask citizens to wear face masks in public. The Lagos State government says it is working on increasing its testing capacity of COVID-19 to over 1,000 per day. This is according to the State Commissioner for Health, Professor Aki Abayomi, during a press briefing at Alausa Secretariat, emphasizing that more testing will result to increasing number of COVID-19 cases in the state. He appealed to residents not to be worried by the numbers and adds that those with mild cases will be managed in their various homes.
If you are diagnosed with COVID-19, you either have asymptomatic, mild, moderate, or severe clinical features. In other words, you either are positive for COVID and you don't feel anything, is what we describe as asymptomatic, or you just have a mild, you may just have some body ache and headache and that's it. Or you may be moderate, in which case you'll be feeling generally unwell and weak, you may lose your appetite, or you may be severe. In other words, you are generally looking and feeling very sick and you're having breathing problems. So naturally, we're going to define who can be managed at home and who can be managed in an isolation facility. We've performed over 22,000 tests in Lagos so far, and we are increasing our capacity to carry out tests more and more every day. We are now at about the capacity to perform 1,000 tests per day, and we're looking to raise that number to 2,000 or 3,000 per day, so that we can test anybody and everybody that needs testing or wishes to be tested. So very soon, the rate at which we are testing is going to keep rising. And don't be alarmed, because the more we test, the more we find.
Professor Aki Abayomi, the Lagos State Commissioner for Health. Now, observing the guidelines on the ease of lockdown has been a particularly difficult task, particularly around markets. Let's start from Oyo State, where in the capital, Ibadan, our correspondent, Bukola Oriowo, went around some major markets and gave us this update.
Curfew in Oyo State is still intact. It still remains from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. As against the federal government directive yesterday that people could now move from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And the state has given reasons for not relaxing the curfew yet. Currently, Oyo State has 317 confirmed cases of the coronavirus, and more than half of this is from just one source. That's the ISON Experience, the company where a lot of the staff have actually tested positive. Contact tracing is still on, and as of the last time we inquired, they had traced almost 800 people who are linked to those who tested positive. So the government is doing an overall appraisal of the situation across the state. And in addition to that, community tracing and testing just began in Oyo State today. So the government for now is not relaxing the curfew. It is still intact, it's still in place. And we went around marketplaces to see the enforcement of the face masks. How much compliance?
On your own, you can see that many people are here. The social distancing is nothing to write home about. The compliance is nothing to write home about. And apart from that, people cluster. And even as I'm talking to you now, if you see around, you see, so you can see the Okada man. You can see the Okada man that is supposed to carry one person. You can see he's carrying already two. He's carrying two already. So it is only God that can save us here.
A lot of enlightenment still needs to be done for people to actually realize the clear and present danger posed by this pandemic. For COVID-19 update, Bukola Oriowo, Channels Television News.
Well, from low compliance to very high compliance, as President Muhammadu Buhari today attended the Friday prayers at the Aso Rock Mosque. It's the first time prayers have been held in the mosque since the restrictions imposed due to the coronavirus pandemic about 12 weeks ago. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 had issued new guidelines on religious activities. Only close aides of the president and officers in the villa on grade level 14 and above participated in the prayer after they were thoroughly screened and had to each wear a mask as well as sanitize their hands as safety measures. Social distancing was also strictly observed in line with the guidelines on public gatherings.
You know, the president as a citizen himself, but beyond that, as a leader of the people. He has a duty to show the Nigerian public the way to observe the prescribed protocols as they exist in the FCT. And I think this is what the president had done. Going through the check, who is going into the mosque? You know, and then they sanitize their own hands. And then they keep social distance, you know, inside. So all of it is to show Nigerians this is the way, and that is the responsibility of leadership. By observing prescriptions as indicated from state to state. Because without this, the war against coronavirus cannot be defeated. Otherwise, all of the gains that have been made will be reversed. So I think this is an essential lesson President Buhari has indicated and should be observed by Nigerians.
It appears the COVID-19 lockdown in Niger State has its negative effect, with experts saying there's a spike in the cases of gender-based violence in that state. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, gives us more from Minna.
Gender-based violence has become an issue of concern, and Niger State is not an exception. In 2019, the wife of the Niger State governor, Dr. Amina Abubakar, led women in Minna, the state capital, to march against gender-based violence and to raise awareness on the menace. According to Rayua Sexual Assault Referral Center, SAC, in Minna, at least 400 cases of gender-based violence have been reported to the center since its inception in June 2014. We spoke with the Monitoring and Evaluation Manager, Dr. Inegbenije Inegbenose, earlier in the day, and this is what he has to say.
Now, of the 278 cases seen, 252 of these cases were females. Of course, that doesn't come as any surprise, as females are form by far the majority of victims of these heinous crimes of gender-based violence. Talking about the case in relation to the period we are in, the COVID period, I would like to say, as a matter of fact, that our numbers are quite high compared to before we had support from USAID when we were working as it is now. Our numbers are quite high compared to that period.
COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown in place, experts believe that there could be a spike in cases of gender-based violence.
We've had a lot of cases because of the COVID period now. You see, the situation is you are now at home, and then more of the predators are now out in the open because everybody is now sitting at home, and the predator is an inbuilt thing. So his acts of what he has been doing has to come out. So people now see that, yes, it's true. When we say women are being violated, it's really true. It's really true. And a lot of them are being killed from violations from men.
One of the factors that give rise to gender-based violence is the culture of silence, where victims keep mute and refuse to speak. Stigmatization is also a concern. Experts believe for people who have been violated to speak up, the society must first of all give them the voice. by not criticizing them when they speak. From Mina, the Niger State capital, Emperor Simon for COVID-19 updates.
Thank you, Simon. Now, curbing gender-based violence, which is on the rise since the lockdown following the coronavirus pandemic, will depend largely on victims reporting such cases and preserving the evidence of the assault so that the police can get convictions when those cases are prosecuted. Police spokesman DCP Frank Omba was speaking to a group of protesters from several civil society organizations at the police headquarters in Abuja today, and they were there demanding justice for the over 80 confirmed cases of rape across the country since the start of 2020. The protesters also made their way to the National Assembly, where the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, promised to ensure states domesticate the child rats and the VAP.
Mr. Hosea Egon is a widowed security man who makes 22,000 naira a month while raising his two daughters alone in Pape. In 2017, his world came crashing down when he came back from work and discovered his two daughters, who were just 9 and 13 years old at the time, had been raped by his landlord, who till today is still missing.
No, I went to Human Rights Commission, I went to NAPTIP, I went to gender units. As I'm talking to you, nothing. Human Rights Commission, the petition Inspector General of Police, which they transferred the case from Pape to CID office, which they invite me for CID office. They take my statement, take the children's statement. Up to now, the only thing they were telling me, who will sponsor this case? And I didn't have that money.
The impact this tragedy has had on Hosea's family is unimaginable, but he finds the courage to survive through help from civil society organizations such as these ones, who are demanding justice from the police for over 80 women who've been raped across Nigeria since January of 2020.
We are tired!
Cases of gender-based violence in Nigeria are constantly in the news, but convictions are very few.
We have, over time, discovered that a lot of cases touching on rape and sexual abuses of women fail essentially because the crime scenes are mismanaged. Once you mismanage the crime scene and the key evidence that are essential in establishing the crime and obtaining a successful prosecution of the suspect is lost, the investigation will run into murky waters.
The demand for justice by these protesters is taken to the National Assembly.
Violence against persons prohibitions and the Child Rights Act and the domestication of both. I'm aware that well over about 20-something states are yet to domesticate. So we as a House, as a House, a federal House, are going to take that initiative to the states. I intend to write and communicate with all the speakers of all 36 states for them to be proactive on this particular piece of legislation.
The lockdown affords abusers both opportunity and access to their victims, especially with domestic violence and sexual offenses. It is pertinent to note that to get justice for any gender-based violence, you must preserve the greatest evidence of all, your body. Kayla Nagwa, Channels Television News.
Kayla Megwa joins me now from our Abuja studios. Good evening, Kayla. It does appear to be a catch-22 situation. People don't talk because they don't want to be identified, they don't want to be stigmatized. But if they don't talk and they're not identified, then they can't get justice.
Good evening, Laddie. That is the truth. Absolutely. Because, well, I think, yes, that is a problem, but something needs to be done, and people need to speak up more. Mr. Frankenbauer was talking about how it may be that there isn't actually an exponential rise in the cases of gender-based violence in the country. It's actually possible that we just have more people speaking up now than before, which, I tend to believe in, because now that more people are speaking up, there's more awareness. We can actually now know that this is wrong. There was a time when we didn't know it was wrong. There was a time when it wasn't even discussed, especially if it was ancestral rape, those kinds of things. But, everyone needs to know what to do. It's time to move on from the outrage of the act in itself. Because as long as we keep talking about how it's an affront on our senses, really, but we cannot just stay at that level. We have to get to where what is to be done if this happens, all right? If someone is raped, what do? The first thing you do, preserve the evidence, and the biggest evidence of all is your body and the place where this thing happened. People need to now know, females and males, right? We all have to know what to do when this happens, if it happens, and do the right thing so we can actually get convictions. Because, laddie, the numbers we see in the news, we see all of these things coming up, but we don't see as many convictions as we need. So for us to be able to really effectively tackle this problem as a society, then we have to move on from the outrage to actual action. So to look out for anyone who's screaming in your neighborhood at night because her husband is beating her up. You have to now start to look out for people who are walking around with injuries and masking injuries that they're getting from home, people who are victims of one thing or the other. The society now has to be proactive and report these cases. And victims, it's terrible at the time. You're in shock. You have to learn not to take a bath. You have to preserve that body so that it can be used as evidence to get this perpetrator to go to jail. It's the most important thing, laddie.
Thank you very much, Kayla, our correspondent, Kayla McGuire. Thank you so much for your reporting on this extremely sensitive matter. Now, rape is one of the issues on the front burner of national discussions. Here's a report on the situation from Jigawa State.
It's a common thing to see a girl who is considered to be a minor hawking around in the markets of Dutse, the state capital of Jigawa. This exposes them to danger, as many have been reported to be raped on their way home. But in recent time, most of the cases reported involves a neighbor or a close relative. But the challenge remains reporting to the authorities, as some parents prefer to hide such information to protect the child against stigmatization.
Most parents are hiding it from the people. They don't want people to know because of the stigmatization that will follow. So they do keep it to themselves. They keep the children at home. They don't take them to the hospital to be checked.
Mr. Lawal Ahmad, the secretary of the Coalition Civil Society Organizations Against Gender Violence, believes the recent lockdown as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to the increase in the number of cases of rape in the state.
Due to this lockdown, the cases have drastically increased, and some are reported to the center, some are not. Because some people are thinking when these cases are reported to any security agency or to the court, then the girl will not have somebody to marry her.
However, the state governor, Badru Abubakar, says the state government is doing everything in its capacity to prosecute perpetrators.
Both the security agencies, the local vigilante, and the Hizbah are watching closely. But you see, it's very, very difficult to monitor everybody and everywhere. But we are doing our best in advocacy.
As the authorities concerned continue to do their best to curb the menace of gender violence, it is expected that community members also contribute their quota, especially by reporting such cases to the relevant authorities.
When we return after the break on our COVID-19 update, we've still got more on this issue of domestic violence, particularly rape. Please stay on with us. Welcome back to our COVID-19 update. We're taking a look at domestic violence, gender-based violence in the era of COVID-19. And curbing gender-based violence requires the input of not only the government, but that of security agencies and the citizens themselves. The call, therefore, is for everyone to speak out against violent acts before, during, or after their commission, even as the government ensures that the security agencies carry out that duty diligently.
Public indignation against the alleged rape and killing of Uwaila Omozua in a church in Benin City, the Edo State capital. The outcry is for an end to rape and gender violence. As to whether there is more to do, this legal practitioner has this to say.
We need to hold our security agencies accountable. They have a lot of work to do. You know, we can't continue like this. It's been like one event, another occurrence, one from Balugu, one happening at Ikeja, the other one in Benin, one at Uselu. Every now and then we hear stories like this. Most sincerely, our governments need to do what they need to do by equipping the security agencies, most importantly, making them to do the job they are paid to do.
For the Edo State government, the fight against gender violence has been on and continues strongly.
The government of His Excellency Mr. Godwin Obaseki is working tirelessly to ensure that appropriate measures are put in place to ensure that victims can find safety and the information that they need to seek redress, and also to ensure that perpetrators are tried, convicted, and punished.
These steps, however, do not preclude individuals from taking bold action, from speaking out against gender violence and reporting cases when they occur, to discouraging victim stigmatization. Jessica Lubuse, Channels Television News.
To take a bird's eye view of this particular situation that's talking about domestic violence and particularly gender-based violence, what the Nigeria police is doing to enforce the law nationwide with regards to the increasing cases of sexual violence. I'm being joined via the telephone from the nation's capital, Abuja, by the Force Public Relations Officer, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Frank Mba. Good evening, Mr. Mba, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, and good evening to our esteemed viewers and listeners.
In the report that we aired before this interview, you did talk about the fact that many cases of rape fail to secure convictions because of tampering with the crime scene. Can you give us a bit more information on that part of it, because it's very important to those who are victims?
Thank you, Laddie, and what you've just said is actually a fact. In this part of the world, fundamentally, there are three factors that we've noticed from our experiences as police officers, as investigators, and as prosecutors that have consistently worked against successful investigation as well as successful prosecution of not just rape cases, but also other forms of sexual violence against our women folk. The first one, which you've just touched on, is a tendency for our people to either intentionally or unintentionally tamper with the crime scene. The truth here is that the crime scene is the most important component of our investigation. The crime scene is a silent witness. The evidence and pieces of and traces of evidence you pick up from the crime scene, they don't lie, they are not subject to emotions, they don't alter, they are just consistent. And so it is very important that we preserve them. And for rape cases is even more important, because rape cases, like I've said before, is one of those gen of crimes, or one of those few gens of crimes where you have two separate crime scenes, the body of the victim as well as the physical location where the crime took place. If we must secure conviction, if we must have a successful investigation and secure conviction, these crime scenes must be preserved in their purest form, in their pristine form, and in their uncontaminated form. What it simply means is that once there is a rape in a room, in a hotel, in a car, wherever it has taken place. When you get there, please don't tamper with anything. If the table is turned upside down, leave it that way for us. If there is, if the bedspread is lying on the floor, leave it. If there are blood stains and somebody, the suspect has matched the blood stain, leaving his footprint or his shoe print on the blood stain, please don't clean up the blood stain for us. If there is a used condom that has dropped on the floor or that is floating in the toilet, don't flush it, don't touch it, don't tamper with anything. Leave them that way. If we come into the crime scene in that form, it will be easier for us to reconstruct the crime scene and determine the sequence of events, find out what the suspect did and what he didn't do, establish the modus operandi, determine if there's any property that was stolen, abandoned, accidentally or deliberately dropped off in the crime scene. These are essential components of our investigation, and they are very key to every investigator. Also, the body of the woman in a case of rape is also a living crime scene. And so how you manage the body, did you rush to the... And again, I must say this with due respect to the emotions of our women folk. If you are a victim of rape, a victim of defilement, it is a very disgusting experience. It is a very traumatizing experience. It is a very painful experience. And the first thing you want to do, the natural instinct, is to rush into the bathroom and take your bath. In fact, for some of the victims, they want to dispose of anything and everything that will make them to remember the sequence or the incident of the rape. So they want to throw away the underwears. They want to trash the bedspread. They want to destroy everything. But we are pleading with them. If it happens, pull yourself together. Don't destroy any of these items because they may just hold the key to unlocking the investigation. And in few cases, or in some cases like date rapes or acquaintance rapes, where probably the suspect might have laced your drink with drugs, or what we call a drug facilitated or a drug induced rape, whether it's yogurt, whether it's wine, whether it's fruit juice, whatever it is, please leave the remnants for us. Taking those things, packing them together, and just a simple analysis with those items might determine the nature of the drug that was used that was laced on the drink or on the food. And again, I also want to make this point. If it is a drug-induced rape, the first thing we want to do is get the person to the hospital as quickly as possible and collect the urine of the victim. Of course, that will be done by medical experts. So you can see, looking at the entire sequence and the entire scenario, it is very, very important that we preserve the scene of crime. And the scene of crime can be anywhere. The scene of crime can be any location. As a matter of fact, even the entry point into the scene of crime, as well as the exit point from the scene of crime, could also hold the key to unlocking the perpetrators of the crime.
DCP Frank Kumba, I'm told we've completely run out of time, but I'm still going to ask you this and maybe give you 90 seconds to give me an answer. And that is, what exactly should people expect? If all the things you've described already are done, how quickly could people expect to get results from, because now we have a number of pending cases. There's the young lady, I believe it is in Jigawa, who identified 10 men who raped her over a period of time. There is the ongoing case in Benin and a number of others like that in various places. What can you tell the families of those victims that they should expect in short order?
Well, for the family of who are in Benin, my heart goes for them. I am a father. I've got a beautiful daughter, and I will never pray for such things to happen to her. I've got sisters, I've got female friends, and I've got a mother. And so I can feel their pain. I can connect with them very intimately. But I can reassure them that we are making progress with that investigation. We are deliberately keeping our hands on the mute button. We don't want to speak on what we are doing for now because we don't want to jeopardize the progress we've made with investigation. But I want to assure Nigerians, I want to assure the family of the deceased that we will find the perpetrators and we will bring them to justice.
All right, thank you very much, DCP Frankenbauer, for your time this evening. Thank you for speaking with us from the nation's capital, Abuja. Now, there are other sides. There are other sides to the issue of domestic violence and all its ramifications. And for that, I'm being joined by a consultant in behavioral change and health communications. She is in our Abuja studios, Mrs. Ehiz Odige Okpatako. I hope I got that right. Good evening, and thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in to the program. Also joining us via Skype from the Oshodi area of Lagos is Senior Registrar at the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital in Lagos, Dr. Idowu Afinowi. Thank you very much for coming in. Let me start with you, Mrs. Odige Okpatako. Is it absolutely correct that when people are more or less confined, then these crimes tend to stand out even more? So it is quite possible that what we're witnessing right now is not an increase in the number, but that the visibility is more, considering that all through this period, people had been more or less confined to where they were.
Well, I would say this. First of all, because of the fact that a lot of people have more access to social media, and also more access to even tools of mass media, awareness has been created about all these sort of incidents. It's something that has been happening over time. We keep hearing right across the decades of Nigeria's growth, we keep hearing from time to time of different cases of rape. But because of the fact that there wasn't really much coverage, there was a lot of stigmatization, there was a lot of shaming, there was also a culture of silence. So many people were either able to just tell their close contacts or tell their relatives about it. But now, even strangers, even outsiders, outside the victim's community or sphere of friends or relatives or well-wishers are able to hear about it and then take it up. But I will say this, because I think the corona lockdown has really helped to bring out the behavior or the attitudes of a lot of people. There's a condition called the lockdown blues, where people start to get agitated, some become aggressive, then you start seeing flashes of anger. And a lot of victims would unfortunately be trapped at home with some of the victimizers, as it were. So over time, when you look at it, the person is agitated, is trapped. Some of them might be on narcotics or alcohol and do not have access to that. One of the side effects of the lockdown that I mentioned, in professional statements, was the fact that we have a lot of people that will be going through what you call forced withdrawal. They had no access to some of the things they were addicted to, and then so therefore they started manifesting episodes of anger and aggression. Now you can imagine whoever is quarantined or locked down or isolated with them will probably be receiving the brunt of their anger. So when you put all these factors together, and the fact that a lot of people knew that when they were leaving the lockdown, they had lost so much. Some of them have lost their jobs, some have lost their businesses, some have no idea what to turn to. Now, we have a lot of Nigerians with very, very poor anger management. So you can imagine putting all those factors together, and you now have somebody that had already been getting some of the signs of violence. Then you will now just have it in full-blown in full-blown displays of the aggression, and then it can also be in the form of rape too, because all those bad guys, as it were, will now have more victims to choose from. Children are at home, young people are away from school, a lot of people could not go to work or their businesses, so you had more victims or more people around, for people to choose from. So the lockdown, as it were, really now manifested or was able to give free rein for weeks for people to show who they really are, and really bring it to the fore.
Dr. Afidowe, let me bring you into the conversation at this point. There will be those who will say that, speaking strictly medically, there is really no link between COVID-19 as a virus and its attendant consequences and what we're witnessing in terms of domestic violence, including rape and other such things. Speaking strictly from that perspective, can you establish a nexus, just like Ahiz has done, between what has happened over the last couple of weeks and these cases of domestic violence? Is there anything, for example, that we can do to mitigate this?
Okay, first thing is, in the COVID pandemic, especially in Nigeria, over the past few months or few weeks now, there's been a lockdown, and this lockdown, people have been restricted from doing their normal daily activities, ditto going to work or having their normal leisure activities or even expressing themselves, because everybody are virtually home, they're staying at home. So people, there are a lot of pent-up anger, people are feeling constrained or restricted by the lockdown rules, especially enacted by different states in the country. And this, in a way, some people, there are some emotions that have been bottled up that they cannot really necessarily express themselves. Even the fact that, some necessarily don't still believe that the coronavirus still is happening. So some just want to express themselves and all that. So now the restriction from the lockdown will not make them to be able to express themselves. And then the ease of lockdown automatically releases, allows people to go out, see their loved ones if possible, and express themselves. So now the resentment of the government did not allow me to express myself, locking me indoor this way. It is time for me to do whatever I want to do and all that. So there is a link actually between the effect of the pandemic on people. And it's not necessarily cast in stone that that the pandemic will lead to increase in rape, but there are other issues that borders around the individuals, especially the rapists, perpetrating this crime. So it is it's not really cast in stone. However, it can explain that the COVID pandemic has a way of actually making people to have some behaviors. For example, now in the US, with the George Floyd case, you can see a lot of people protesting, even throwing into the air the fact that social distancing is not fully maintained, and that does not negate the fact that the pandemic still persists. But due to the protest and other issues around that, people are not really observing that. So, which unfortunately has a negative effect on the long run, which you might not necessarily see now. But the pandemic has a way of affecting the way people react, especially if there are other social issues, uprising, or whatever that is happening.
Let me bring back, sorry, Doc, let me put you on pause there. Let me bring back Ahiz Odigye or Patako at this point. I understand what both yourself and the good doctor are saying, but there will be those who will be asking the question, is that also responsible for the outstanding, if you like, case in Jigawa, where you have this 12-year-old lady, 12-year-old young girl, who identified 10 different men over a period of time who are being, looked for, have been arrested now for raping her. Is this explanation also consistent with what happened in that case, for example?
You see, in Nigeria, now, we have what you call or what you would describe as being a patriarchal society. So you have a situation where a young man grows up and believes that he is entitled to a woman's body. He grows up with the belief that the woman is a second-class citizen. He grows up with the belief that a woman was only created or was given birth to satisfy him in whatever means or manner he chooses. In a lot of cases, if you question the mentality of a lot of young men, even on social media, some of them believe that women are objects to be sold, to be gotten, to do with whatever you like or whatever you please. A lot of this failure that we are seeing starts from the family. A lot of attention is given to the girl child in growing up, in how to comport yourself, in how to manage issues. But we have a lot of young men that just grew up and saw themselves as adults and had no sense that being a man is all about responsibility. You do not just because you like something or you want something and you take it. But when a lot of them were growing up and they got away with a lot of things because we tend to be very, very tolerant of the misadventures and poor behavior displayed by sons or boys growing up, and they go, oh, that's a young man sowing his oats, or that's a young man behaving a certain way. So a lot of them grow up with the mentality that, oh, I want that and I take it. A lot of times people need to look at it very critically. Where did they get this attitude from? Is it peer pressure? Is it learned behavior? Or was it something that stemmed from an attitude problem? You find some of these young men, there was a situation that happened. The man was a stalker, and he kept on asking this lady out, and the lady said no. And he could not take no for an answer because he could not believe that he could be rejected. He trailed her home, and he got her killed. That happened in the Southwest some years back. Now, when you look at that some years ago and what is happening right now, a 12-year-old girl, for those men, I'm sorry to say this, I believe part of the problem is also pornography. You have people with the inability to manage their libidos, and some of them are on stimulants and maybe narcotics, and then they see a poor innocent girl and feel that she should be used as an object of desire. Note, not as a human being, but as an object to satisfy their desire. And then even when these cases are reported, you are shamed by your family, or if you're not shamed by your family, you're shamed by your environment. So you are made to feel guilty. What were you finding there? What were you wearing? Not making the victim look like a person, not humanizing the victim, but actually making the person look like an object. Oh, what were you finding there? Oh, now you go find the problem. Oh, why did you dress this way? Why did you look this way? But if the society now understands, and I think it has to even do with our curriculum, these things need to be included. There has to be confidence building, because some of them are antisocial. Some of the perpetrators of this crime, they are antisocial. Some of them have very, 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 very poor social skills. Some of them
I'm going to have to put you on pause. We need to take a quick break. But when we return, Dr. Afinowe will have the last word on this conversation. But do stay on with us. Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back to our COVID-19 update. Dr. Afinowe, you have about 60 seconds to give me your response here. Looking ahead, what are people supposed to be on the lookout for? I asked this question earlier when I thought you would address it, but is there any way to mitigate this?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. First thing is, now everybody needs to be vigilant and observant. Especially the girl child, parents need to be more closer to their children. They have to have a relationship with them, because those rapists, if you look at the theory surrounding rape and all that, there are a lot of issues that borders on the rapists themselves, especially in the area of their family dynamics, how they grew up, their educational background. Also, you should also look at the presence of mental health issues even in them, because some individuals could have mental health issues which could predispose them to having or even perpetrating some sexual offenses. For example, those individuals that have a diagnosis of bipolar affective disorder that are manic could have high libidos, which could explain their disinhibition towards fulfilling their desires. So everybody needs. So you also need to check out our mental health to know that those that have issues they can be addressed by visiting specialists who can attend to their needs. So you need to be.
Thank you very much. Dr. Afidowi, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut in. If you recollect, I did say about 60 seconds. Those 60 seconds are up. Let me thank Dr. Idowu Afidowi, Senior Registrar at the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital in Lagos, for joining us via Skype from Oshodi. And let me also thank Ehis Odige Okpatako, who joined us from our Abuja studios. She is a consultant in behavioral change and health communication. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. 11,516, that's the total number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria in the last 24 hours, as displayed on the website of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, the NCDC. Total persons discharged is 3,535, and 323 deaths have been recorded. That leaves the number of active cases in the country at 7,658. Following over 70,000 tests carried out across the country, a breakdown of regions shows Lagos in the southwest maintaining the highest number at 5,542, followed by Kano in the northwest with 980 cases. The FCT in the north central region is third with 792. Borno is still in the lead in the northeast with 322. Edo leads in the south-south with 351, while Ebonyi leads in the southeast with 80 cases. The World Health Organization says it is now advising governments to encourage their citizens to wear fabric face masks in public areas to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. The World Health Organization had previously said there was not enough evidence to support the use of masks by healthy people in public, but that medical masks should be worn by those who were sick and those caring for them. In its new guidance, the WHO stresses that face masks are just one of a range of tools that can now be used to reduce the risk of transmission, and that they should not give people a false sense of protection. Meanwhile, the UN agency says the COVID-19 battle is not over till there's no virus anywhere in the world. Find more information on how to protect you and your loved ones from the website of the World Health Organization, the WHO. There you can find the global figures on the pandemic. Our own website, channelstv.com, also has the latest news. All you need to do is log on and access the news in health, politics, business, sports, Africa, and around the world, all at your fingertips. Thank you for watching. I am Ladi Akiridoluale. Have a lovely weekend ahead. Good night.